What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddi Nicole, and as you can tell, today I will be sharing with you my birth story. So first of all, congratulations. If you are anything like me, you're probably getting ready to have a baby and you want to watch every last video on YouTube that you can find about labor and delivery. So to get into this video, I first should let you know that I was recommended a book called Supernatural Childbirth by Jackie Mize by my mother-in-law. And I got the book and I read it and I had my husband read it as well. It's all about how to have a supernatural childbirth, painless and all natural. And yes, you heard me correctly, pain-free. That's exactly what I had. So after I turned 37 weeks, my midwife told me that it could be any day now. I hadn't really felt like I was getting close to giving birth at all. All my friends, I had quite a few friends that were pregnant, and all of their experiences is that they had contractions for about like 3, 4, 5 days. So one day when I started to feel what I thought might be a contraction, I didn't realize how fast everything was going to happen. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, I was at work and I started to feel what felt like really sharp period cramps. And it came out of nowhere. I was completely fine in the morning, and then all afternoon I was having those pains. I kind of brushed it off, and by the time Saturday rolled around, they were only happening every now and then, so nothing too serious, nothing that put me on alert until it was Saturday night and I was trying to sleep. That night was so hard to sleep. I did everything I could, and altogether I probably only got about 2 hours of sleep. So I was experiencing what had to be contractions because I had never felt this before. And all night long I would take a bath, I'd get out of the bath, I'd lay on the ground, I'd lay across the exercise ball. I would swing my hips on all fours, then I'd try to get back in bed and sleep. And I'd probably have about 10 minutes of sleep before I had to do it all over again. So I probably had like 4 baths that night, and I probably called OB triage at my hospital and talked to them about 3 times that night before Sunday rolled around. What I was experiencing was pretty tough. It was starting to give me some back pain, and it felt like period cramps on steroids. And then they had the audacity to tell me it could have been Braxton Hicks. So at that point, Sunday rolled around and I was telling my husband what I was experiencing. He suggested I stay home from church and just rest up since I didn't get any sleep the night before. But in the back of my head, I thought, okay, if I really do go into labor, like if this is the real deal, then I need to go to church. Like I need to hear one last good word. It was Super Bowl Sunday, and all through church, I had contractions about 10 minutes apart. This whole time, I did not know if this was a serious contraction or if it was the Braxton Hicks. I had no clue what I was feeling because I never had a baby before. But that's when it started to stop me in my tracks. So when I would sit there in church, I could not do anything except for like sit here and hold my breath and squeeze my husband. And every time I would do that, he would get so excited asking me like, oh, is today the day? And I would just be like, I don't know. Because for one, I didn't know, and 2, I didn't want to get his hopes up if it wasn't. So we get home, Super Bowl Sunday, my husband and I had been talking about watching the game for probably about a month now. He found this recipe of wings he wanted to try. He started seasoning and marinating them the night before. He found these new techniques. And so this Super Bowl Sunday was gonna be like a huge day for us at the house. And my contractions were getting intense. So the whole time I couldn't even watch the game. I was just like rolling around completely in my head. Like I had no clue what was happening, like with myself or with the game. And my husband kept asking like, okay, do we need to go to the hospital? And my answer was always no, but it was starting to pick up. So I did download the contraction app, or contraction tracker app. And it started telling me like, okay, this is getting serious. I had notifications pop up and it would tell me, okay, your contractions are really picking up now. Think about going to the hospital soon, maybe pack your bags. And then I would just dismiss that notification. And then over time, kept tracking the contractions, and then I had another notification pop up. And it was like, okay, you're for sure, it's time to go to the hospital, stop what you're doing and go. So I dismissed that notification because in my head, I was thinking, my hospital told me they wanted me to follow the 5-1-1 rule. So if my contractions were 5 minutes apart, 1 minute long for 1 full hour, that's when I had to go to the hospital. But I didn't feel like I was completely there yet. My contractions would, sometimes they'd be 4 minutes apart, and then sometimes they'd be like 12 minutes apart. So it was never super consistent, so I just kept dismissing the notification. Then I got a third notification, and this time my husband was over my shoulder, and so he actually saw what the notification said. And at this point, the notification on the tracker said, like, don't even get in your car and go to the hospital, like call 911, they are coming to pick you up. That's how serious it was. And my husband was like, oh my gosh, babe, we gotta go. And I was like, no, it's okay, I already saw this notification 2 other times. And at that point, he was like, okay, we're going. We are about 20 minutes away from the hospital, but my parents live 2 minutes away from the hospital. So our plan that we talked about way before all of this took place was that when I felt like contractions were starting to come on and things were starting to move along, we would just drive from our house to my parents' house, and I would just do active labor there as long as I can before it's time to go to the hospital. That way, I don't have to stay in the hospital and labor around the hospital room. So we got to my parents' house. It was probably like 6 or 7 p.m. and we just stayed there and kind of labored through it. In my head the whole time, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, obviously I knew my body was transitioning to get ready to have a baby, but I didn't really comprehend like how fast it was gonna happen, and that like I at that point was actually in active labor. So to me, all I could think about is all of my friends who had babies recently and how they were experiencing what I'm in right now for several days. So I didn't really think that like I was having a baby anytime soon, to be honest. So I was at home laboring. My whole family was there. My brother's girlfriend was there. And it was so interesting to see like my brother and my dad, like both my brothers and my dad's reaction to basically everything I was going through. Because I know my dad had seen all of this in the past when my mom was pregnant with all of the kids. But like my brothers like had never seen this before. And so it was really comforting to see like my older brother and my younger brother, and they would try to comfort me by like distracting me by telling me stories and stuff. And my mom would be like, she's not listening to you. Like, she can hear you, but she has no, like, she's not paying attention. And it was like the truth. So they were massaging me, they were putting hot pads on my back, and it came to a point where it was like, and then I was going to the bathroom like every 10 minutes, I swear. This video is gonna be TMI, by the way. But I remember when I was in the bathroom, I lost like my mucus plug or had the bloody show. And I remember yelling out, well, there goes my mucus plug. And my dad was like, what? At a certain point, like when you're starting to labor, like you don't care about anything. You were just like trying to make it through. The whole time I was trying to keep myself calm and remember that when I read in that book, they talked about contractions. And instead of focusing on pain and hurt, they said to focus on like thinking about what happens during a contraction. If you were to like flex your arm is contracted. And if you were to hold that muscle, it's not painful, but it's just uncomfortable. And after a long time of holding it, your arm gets a little bit shaky and the muscle starts to quiver, and that's all a contraction is. It's nothing painful about it, it's just uncomfortable. And so that's what I was, telling myself in my mind and just trying to focus on. And I didn't have any pain during all of that. It was just very uncomfortable. Like in my head, I was like, please, like stop. And every time like you can start to feel a contraction come on, and you could just, it's so weird. You could just like start to feel it and you're like, okay, here's one is coming. And then all of a sudden, like everything's like in your head just stops and you zone everything out and you can't do anything for yourself. Right after it passes, then you're fine. You could just like talk and walk around and everything's back to normal. It is the weirdest experience. So there came a point where I was like, it's time to go to the hospital. You just know, like something clicks, like you've done all you can, there's nothing else you can do, and things are picking up. That's when you know. And also I had my mom tracking my contractions on the app, and it was starting to line up with what my hospital was saying, the 5-1-1 rule. So at that time it was like, we're going. So we roll up to the hospital. It's about 7:50 p.m. and we get in there. I remember like I first went straight for the wheelchair, and then like I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I'm not crippled. If I get in this chair, I'm just like telling myself that like I can't active labor anymore, and all I can do is just sit here and take it. I wanted to be active and I didn't want anything to start to overtake me, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna walk. So walking up to labor and delivery, I remember I had a couple contractions throughout the hallway. People were stopping to check on me. Once we get up there, I get checked in, I go into the room, and they tell me, okay, put on this little tube. And it looked like a little, it was just like a little stretchy band. And they told me to put it over my stomach. So they left the room, and then I thought I was just supposed to get naked from the waist down, so that's what I did. I didn't know that you're just like supposed to keep on all your clothes and just put it over your bare tummy. And then my husband kept making jokes because my belly was so big at that point. I was like, okay, it's either they're gonna cover my belly or it's gonna cover down there, but you gotta pick one or the other, because like my belly's too big to make both of those reach. So my husband and I were kind of like laughing in there, and he was like cracking jokes about it, and it was making me laugh so hard. And the nurse had come in at that point to get ready to like hook me up to the monitors and check me. And she was like, oh yeah, well, if you're still laughing, you know, you're probably not ready to be admitted right yet. And was she wrong? So then anyway, she went ahead and hooked me up and noticed that I was having like pretty intense contractions. And so she said, okay, let's check to see if you're dilated. They put their hand way up there. I swear she was elbows deep, and I practically ran off that table. She was like, oh, you are 5 centimeters. You are not going home tonight. So at that point, I looked at Kenny and I was like, wow. And I don't know, in my head, I still did not process like I'm having a baby tonight. I have no clue, like it just, everything was so surreal to me that in my head I'm like, is this actually happening? And at this point I was 38 weeks, like to the dot. Like the very next day I was 38 weeks. So I just didn't, you know, I had also heard that most people's first pregnancy, they're usually delivering late and not early. So anyway, I know God had a perfect plan, but in my head, I just didn't process anything. So they monitored me for 20 minutes or so, and then they transitioned us from the triage to a labor and delivery room. So as they were getting all of that transition, giving me the IV, they were joking with us and they were like, you know, it's Super Bowl Sunday. We thought tonight was gonna be super busy because everyone would be eating hot wings and going into labor. And Kenny and I were like, oh my gosh, I ate hot wings today. Like, this is why we're here. So they bring us to the labor and delivery room, and it was huge, like super, super huge. And they go ahead and show us around, and they show us the cabinet with all of the tools and the equipment and exercise balls that we might want to use. And they showed us the bathroom and the jacuzzi tub, and basically just said, you are free to labor however you want. We are here when you need us. And like, that was it. It was just weird because I thought they were going to be very like on us 24/7, but the entire time it was actually a really nice experience because it was really intimate. It was just Kenny and my mom and I, and we basically just had the whole place to ourselves and got to do whatever we wanted. I mean, labor however we wanted. I mean, that's what we were doing there. So I remember it wasn't long before I wanted to get into the jacuzzi tub because when I was at home, the bath really helped me. So in the tub, I remember asking Kenny to like crank it hotter, and he's like, babe, the water is boiling and it can't even go any hotter. But I remember I felt like so cold, and all of a sudden, like I remember like laying there, well, like sitting in the tub, and Kenny was just holding my hand and he was like breathing with me when I felt contractions come on. And then I felt like I got the labor shakes. And if you know what the labor shakes is, it looks freaky. It's where your body is uncontrollably shaking and you can't do anything about it because your body is in the middle of transitioning. And so to me, I remember when I saw that video before I was giving birth, I was like, I do not want the labor shakes because I'm afraid I'm gonna hyperventilate, it's gonna freak myself out, this and that. And it was comforting having my mom and Kenny there because I just looked over at them and they just had a calm look on their face, like everything was fine, which really helped me to stay calm. The whole time I just kept thinking about like, okay, if I remain calm through all these contractions and labor and everything going on, if I'm calm, then my baby is gonna be calm and everything is gonna go much healthier, much quicker, you know, much easier, and everything's gonna be a healthier experience. So after I wanted to get out of the tub, I needed to use the bathroom. So Kenny helped me get out and walked me to the toilet. And I remember looking at the toilet, like, I was like, babe, I don't wanna sit on that. Because you know, like you're conditioning your head that like, you don't sit bare booty on any toilets. Like you gotta do the squat. But like when you're in labor, you can't do the squat. So here I was 8 centimeters dilated, like making Kenny put toilet paper on the seat for me. And I sat down, I went pee, and I was just sitting there, and then I felt like I went pee again. But I felt like I also didn't go pee again. And so I just sat there and I was like, babe, I may or may not have just peed again, but I really feel like I didn't. And he was like asking me if he thought my water broke, and I was like, I think it might have. And so at that time, a nurse actually came back in and we told her what we felt. And so she was like, okay, well, if you want, we can check you to confirm if it was your amniotic fluid, or we don't have to check you. In my head, I was like, you know, I really don't want to feel them like check me again. But at the same time, like I did, because that was part of my prayer going, you know, leading all the way up till this moment. Like I wanted my water to break on its own. And so I had her check me. And it was my water. So my water broke on its own. Thank you, God. So after I found out my water broke, I was kind of at the point where all I wanted to do was lay in bed. And she did tell me that after your water breaks, things can kind of deflate on the inside. And so I might go down in dilation, which I had no clue about. And so when they checked me again, I was at 6 centimeters. So I went from 8 centimeters back down to 6 centimeters. And at first I kind of felt defeated, but I was reassured that it probably won't take long before I can get back up. Also, they told me that my contractions are going to be more intense now that my water has broke, because I don't have anything cushioning myself anymore. So I remember I was just laying on my side in bed and I just could like feel when I was starting to have a contraction, and I would just breathe. And I remember I started doing like the moan breathing that they tell you how to do in like those classes. But that was kind of freaking myself out, hearing myself like moan like that. And so we transitioned to just breathing like heavy breaths. And my husband like was right at my side and he did everything with me. And it was really comforting basically to be able to do that with somebody. And it wasn't just like you're on your own. So I remember the nurse had come back in at a certain point and she wanted to check my vitals. And I was like, okay. So I needed to like sit up for her. But I remember like just getting up so slow. And I was like, okay, I am so sorry, but I feel like I'm gonna throw up first. And so they gave me a bag and they were like, no, don't ever be sorry. Like this is a good sign. It means you're getting really close. And I just puked my guts out. And those 3 wings I had were no longer there. And it'd been a really long time since I ate. But the other part, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was in labor, I don't remember ever like feeling hungry. And I'm a girl who's like hungry 24/7, let me tell you. But I don't remember feeling hungry or anything. I think it's because when you're in active labor like that and you have no pain medication, you are just completely like, you can't think about anything. Like I couldn't even process the fact that I was having a baby. Okay, so things are wrapping up. We're starting to get close to having this baby. So the nurse comes back in and she says, you're not gonna like me very much, but this is really gonna help open up your cervix very quickly. So she takes this peanut ball and stuffs it in between my knees when I'm laying on my side. Oh my gosh. I did not want that thing there, but I knew if it was gonna make this process quicker, it has to stay there. So I just let it stay there and I just dealt with it. But every contraction I had with that peanut ball in between my legs was much more intense. So at this point, my contractions were about every 2 minutes, which was very, very frequent. And they were also very, very intense, but I felt like the duration of them felt a lot shorter. So at this point, my contractions were about every 2 minutes. And I remember I was still able to sleep in between every single contraction I had. I don't know like if it was just because I was running on barely any sleep from the night before or what it was, but honestly looking back, I think it was God's way of allowing me to preserve all my energy for when I needed it the most. So I was able to sleep through between every one of my contractions, even the 2-minute intervals. And I remember I was like starting to get more intensity, and I told them, okay, I feel like I have to push. And she was like, okay, no, like you'll know. And I was like, okay, well, it feels like it. And she was like, okay, well, if it feels like it during your contraction, just wait, because it's gonna feel like it even between your contractions. And so went back to sleep for 2 minutes, and I woke back up during my next contraction. I was like, okay, I feel like I really gotta like push. And she was like, I don't think you're really there yet, but like, don't fight it. And so I remember that third contraction came, and I just like rolled over in bed, and I was like, I'm pushing something out. There was a certain point in your labor when you're about to deliver a baby and your body just starts to push on its own. Like, I wasn't even trying to push. At that point, all you can do is just like lay there, and your body just starts like shooting things out, okay? TMI, but it's the truth. At that point, she came back in, she checked me. She did not have to go elbows deep this time. All she had to do is stick like a little finger right there. And she was like, okay, she's having this baby right now. She's at a full 10 centimeters. And then my eyes were kind of like closed through this whole thing. I just remember opening them briefly at moments. But I feel like within just minutes, they had me rolled on my back, had the table positioned to the right place. They had like a team of 8 people in there, and they just transformed the entire room. And like, it just happened so fast. I have no clue how it happened. And my mom and Kenny were in there, and they were like amazed at how fast the turnaround was. And all of these people just showed up out of nowhere within like a split second. So now it's baby time, it's pushing time, it's go time. So they told me to basically make my contractions work for me. So they said, push while you're contracting. And they basically went over how to breathe with me and how to push, my position, everything. And before you know it, like I was pushing, like my contractions were every 2 minutes. And so like by my very next contraction, like I was pushing a baby. And it was the weirdest thing because like it just happened so fast, especially when you felt like you just woke up out of a deep sleep. You know what I mean? And now you're just pushing a baby out. So it was really funny because my husband and I talked about this before, about where he was going to be when I'm pushing. He initially wanted to be up at my shoulder with me and being right there for me, but I was like, no, if I've got to feel it, you've got to see it. So you're gonna be down there like seeing everything I'm going through. And he did not want to, like, he was gonna do whatever he needed to do, but he was like, I just can't unsee some things, and I'd just rather not. And when it was the go time, he did not get a choice. The nurse was like, okay, Daddy, you are down here, I'm here, you're there. And she just directed the whole thing, and he was stuck watching everything. It was amazing. So every time I had a contraction, they wanted me to push 3 times for 10 seconds each. And after that, then I was able to rest until my next contraction came on. And so I remember just pushing with all my might, and it's still like not real to me. Like, I'm about to meet my baby. If it's your first time, like you've never experienced this before. So you don't know like what it's supposed to feel like when you're pushing. Like you don't know anything. You're just going with the flow. And I was just like pushing. And then it took about, I think 4 sets of contractions. And I remember they were like, okay, put your hand down here to feel your baby's head. And it was like, I don't know, it was crazy because not being able to see it down there but feel it, I was just like, first of all, like I felt a human head, and it was like really soft and wet. And then I was thinking like, dang, like that's a lot of head, like I must be wide open down there. So once I pushed out her head, I remember having this huge relief. I thought like, cause you could feel it like come out. So I had this huge relief. I felt like I was done. I just had a baby. And then they told me, okay, her head's out. Now you just need to get the rest of her body out. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like I was thinking like, okay, shoulders are a lot wider than the head. So like, I'm gonna have to push even harder? What? is that even possible? And so I remember I felt on the inside, I felt her legs like literally do like these little butterfly kicks, like she was trying to wiggle on out. And however they were able to monitor baby as well, they were like, they even confirmed it at the same time. They were like, oh yeah, she's trying to get out of there. And at that point it was such a weird feeling that I just pushed. I was like, okay, get her out. And it was really easy and she just came right on out after that. And remember, they just put her on my chest right away. My hospital believes in doing skin to skin immediately, as quick as possible, and as well as breastfeeding if you choose to breastfeed. And so they put her on my chest right away, and they just like dried her up and did her vitals or whatever they have to do while she was on my skin. And that was just the most surreal feeling I've ever felt in my life. Because here, like, I was just like laboring. Like, I had her at 1:52 a.m. and we checked into the hospital at 8 p.m. So we were there for 5 hours and 52 minutes, and now she's here in my arms. What was also really weird about having, changing from feeling your contractions to pushing is all of a sudden all that intensity and how strong each contraction was that I was feeling. Once it was time to push, I didn't feel any more of that intense intensity, because it's really a mental thing. Instead of feeling like and thinking and being consumed about like, here's a contraction and there it goes. It's more like, okay, time to push, time to stop. And don't get me wrong, contractions are a beast, okay? There is nothing else in the world like feeling a contraction. But when I look back, I never experienced pain. Nothing was painful. It was that uncomfortable feeling I was telling you about, and it just kept increasing and multiplying. But it was never like, ouch, this hurts, get me out of pain. And I think it's because Kenny and I went in with such strong faith that we were going to have this baby completely supernatural, perfect, painless, quick, easy, and supernatural labor and delivery, that we did not even prepare a plan B. Like, we went in with plan A and we were determined to have that executed. So baby's on my chest, I'm just looking at baby's looking at me. She was so cute, and she just looked up at her mama, and she had little wrinkles on her forehead, and she was just staring and gazing in my eyes and just accepting the whole world that she's in now. And it was just the most beautiful experience ever. So after our skin to skin, we went ahead and breastfed, and the nurse helped get her to latch immediately. She ate for about half an hour, and then after all of our skin to skin time and nursing, she went over to the warmer and they did all of the tests and whatever else they have to do on her. And then Daddy got to hold her, which was so precious. I do remember once they took her off my body to bring her over to the warmer and do all of their tests over there, it was the craziest experience, because as soon as she came off of my body, I was freezing. And I was in disbelief that something so little and so small could generate and provide me with so much body heat. Because the second she was gone, I was shaking almost to those labor shakes again. And my mom, she threw the covers over me, got a jacket, put that over me, and put her whole body over me. And I was still shaking. It was freezing. So that was so crazy how something so tiny can just give you so much heat. So then a nurse told me that I did have a 2nd-degree tear, and so she was going to give me a couple internal stitches. So she went ahead and started taking care of me at that point, and that's when Kenny's mom had come in the room to be a part of it as well. And I was like, okay, please let her know what she's walking into, because this looks like a crazy mess right now. So congratulations, you had baby, you're all settled in, mommy, daddy's got to hold her, we're gonna help you get up, go to the bathroom, and now we're gonna transition you to a postpartum room that is about this big. So that's amazing, because I had her at 1:52 a.m. so it was technically the next day. It was that Monday. And that Monday is when I was exactly 38 weeks, or would have been 38 weeks. And so I was supposed to have an appointment with my midwife that day, and then Kenny and I were actually supposed to tour the hospital and get our hospital tour. that was unnecessary. So then my midwife saw in the books that we had our baby, and she ran over and came to visit and just congratulate us and like hear the whole birth story. And she was like, this is amazing. I read all of your notes. And she did tell me that most first-time moms who end up having a baby completely natural with no medication, pushing can usually take an average of 3 hours. And she said from the time I was 10 centimeters dilated to the time when baby was born was documented as 20 minutes. So praise God, because I could not imagine going for much longer. And I give it to all you moms out there who were in hours and of pushing, because that is intense. And if you can do that for that long, then like you deserve like everything that you ever wish for, because that is insane. So that is my birth story and our wonderful testimony about having a supernatural childbirth. Kenny and I really hit some key points with all the things that we wanted during labor and delivery, and all the things were completely answered prayers, which was amazing. So we prayed for very specific things. So don't be afraid to get very specific when you're talking to God. So I wanted my water to break on its own, and I wanted to go into labor on it my own, meaning I did not want to be induced. I also just wanted to have a perfect, painless, easy, quick labor and delivery, but I also did not want it to be so quick to the point where we were rushing to the hospital and then seconds later having this baby. Like, I wanted to feel secure and like we had time to get there and settle in and feel comfortable, because I'm the kind of person who has to be very planned, and I didn't want to feel rushed and just freak out and do everything wrong. So God made it happen. Just remember to be very spirit-filled and very specific in what you're praying for, because as long as you're diligent and you are doing your part, God can answer all of your prayers. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. That's all I have for you. That's our supernatural childbirth. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to hear any more specifics about our story, go ahead and leave it in a comment below. I just tried to give you as short as I could. This video might be super long still. But also, if you have any questions for the specifics of how we prepared and how we set our faith so strong on having a supernatural childbirth, go ahead and comment below so I can help you guys out with everything I know. And all you moms and moms-to-be, you are going to do great. Don't even worry. Just put all of your worries on God. He's going to take care of you, and your experience is going to be completely unique and perfect. All right, guys, I'll see you on my next video. Bye.